So at the beginning of Stormblood, you let everyone know that the number of dungeons added in each patch would be altered. As a player, I have felt quite satisfied with the quality of the dungeons and do not feel the expert roulette has negatively been impacted by that change. So can you discuss in some detail how that change has benefited the development team? Are there any specific content additions that would have been delayed or difficult had you not had that extra time to work on things?
Yeah, definitely. With being able to allocate development resources, with the shift in our sort of pattern where we're releasing dungeon content, where we have our even number patches to have 2 dungeons, and then our odd number patches having just 1, we did alleviate. We don't have to make that 1 extra dungeon. So examples of current content that we do have available, the Eureka, Forbidden Land of Eureka content is something that we were able to work on and concentrate and put in more effort. Had we been making 2 dungeons as we were previously doing, I don't think we would have been able to achieve such a large scale content. Same goes for the Ultimate Battle series as well, or the Heaven on High that's going to be released very soon as well. We were able to reallocate those development resources to bring a new gaming experience, bring more new gaming experience, and looking at how players are actively participating in those, many players actively participating in those, is definitely a good sign for us that not only was it beneficial for our development team, but it has reflected really well into the game as well.
So you mentioned the Ultimate Battles, although I'm not ready to take them on because they're really, really hard. They've been very well received from the hardcore raiding community. What can we expect going forward? Should we anticipate, if there's a hypothetical 5.0 Ultimate to come from Heavensward? Would it come from Heavensward content? Should people, because I know a lot of people want to see Ultimate Knights of the Round or things like that. So is that kind of maybe the thinking that maybe when we get to 5.0 that you'll draw from some Heavensward content?
So with the Ultimate series, we have not set any sort of like limitations or boundaries actually. Just like the players are sort of speculating and imagining what kind of battle content is coming up next, the development team also are thinking about, so what kind of monsters can we bring out? How do we express their sort of ultimate strength? And how do we pose a great challenge to our players? So, of course, with the existing content that we have gone from Bahamut to Ultima, so people might get the impression that we have been drawing from A Realm Reborn, and so, logically speaking, the next would probably be from Heavensward. But again, we are not setting any sort of limitation on what kind of content we bring, and it all kind of falls upon whomever is handling creating that raid content, and we're waiting on them to bring us the idea of what kind of ultimate fight that we're going to encounter, that we're going to bring. So we actually don't really have a clear plan on it just yet. But of course, Yoshida does acknowledge, and they've seen comments and requests about people would love to see a Knights of Round ultimate battle. And yeah, there are many different knights within the Knights of Round, of course. So it would probably make for a really good, sort of interesting battle, definitely.
There are players that were at first upset with how Eureka turned out, mostly in terms of the slower pace of play. But one addition that has been very well received has been the challenge logs added to Eureka. Are there plans to add other features from outside Eureka, such as maps or daily hunts, to kind of speed up leveling and also provide more variety in that content?
What's interesting with the Forbidden Land of Eureka is that, unlike other content in Final Fantasy XIV, this is intentionally made so that you are putting in the time. We say time to win. And it's something that players should be taking their time in experiencing the content. And additionally, it's not a content where all of the players are going to take on, and it's something that really requires player skill, and it's something that the battles really require player skill. And so if we do incorporate elements that speed up a player's level, if it speeds up leveling, it might kind of defeat the purpose. People who want to take the time might feel like things are going by too quickly, and so it's not as satisfying. But that being said, of course, we are monitoring the situation, and we will be making certain adjustments whenever they are needed and as necessary to make sure that we're not causing players a great deal of stress, and we don't want players to get too frustrated at the same time.
So, achievement hunters have noted the extreme amount of time needed to complete all the levy achievements. Would a solution such as allowing people to buy levy allowances with Gil or some other currency be possible to try and make those achievements a little bit more possible?
He has a friend that works at Ubisoft, and they actually enjoy the grind, and we've set the bar really high, of course, to check, and so they worked really hard every day to get to that achievement. So Yoshida feels that we should have challenging in that aspect for people who like to do stuff like that, people who are completionists, people who want to obtain that achievement. Of course, it's understood that some people might feel it's too much of a grind, or they might not enjoy the process, but I think it's nice to have that kind of content for those people who enjoy doing the grind. And if we were to make it purchasable, people might complain that, oh, well, that's pay to win. So no plans for making any sort of changes to that at the moment. But he wanted to add that friend at Ubisoft, they were able to obtain that achievement finally, but afterwards, and they were kind of laughing about it, but he mentioned that I want to kill the guy who set those numbers, who made that calculation. So we understand that it's a very tough process to get there to achieve it.
Now that bards can play music, other jobs are wondering if one day they will get their own out-of-combat job actions. Do you think this is possible? And do you have any ideas that you'd like to try out if one day you have time to do such a thing?
Of course, because the performance action was something that a bard can do, and what we've implemented as sort of a bard's job action, people might have gotten the impression or the image that this was assigned to a particular job. But the thinking behind it was actually quite different. It was the opposite, actually. We were thinking about the end. We want people to be able to play music in the world of Eorzea. And then from that idea, so how do we make that happen? Oh, we happen to have a job called Bard. And so what perfect way to implement that idea? And it sort of matches that sort of role play aspect of a Bard being able to perform. And so that's how it came about. So for example, if we were to think about other actions that we could do in the realm of Eorzea, say, for example, we thought about, we want to have our players pantomime within the realm of Eorzea. Then from there, they would take that idea and think, okay, so how do we want to get this to happen? Do we want it to, which job would be most appropriate for this action? Or do we want to have everybody be able to use this? Will we have to create a new job just so that we can accommodate for this, etc., etc.? So we think about what the gameplay experience is going to be first, and then sort of tailor it to what we want to achieve. So it might not be in the best interest to think about, what job will get an out-of-combat action next, but rather think about what new ideas the development team will have to do more sort of out-of-battle actions.
Under the Moonlight just recently added a number of job adjustments. So now following this patch, I just kind of want to get a sense of what your current feelings are on the state of job balance in the game. Is there anything in particular that you feel needs more attention right now?
I think we have to understand first and foremost, in an MMORPG, we believe that the job balance with the different jobs in Final Fantasy XIV, we believe that the balance will never be sort of fixed or finalized. And so with each content that we release through our patches, unfortunately there is some kind of disparity that does show up depending on which job is being utilized. Some may feel that certain jobs are more advantageous over others and vice versa. But as developers, we want to make sure that we're monitoring the situation and make sure that we're not causing too much stress. It doesn't cause too much stress on the players, and make very fine adjustments with each patch. And so I think there isn't a patch where we make some kind of adjustment to the different jobs. But looking at it from a developer perspective, what we currently have, he does feel that we are at a fairly good state. Of course, but that being said, I'm sure every player wants their particular job to be the best, to be the strongest, and so our battle to achieve job balance is going to be an unending battle.
A quality of life change that I often see requested is it would be the ability to repair all, not just equipped or individually, just one button that will repair everything that you have. Is this something that is possible, or are there limitations on doing this?
Technically speaking, it is possible. Of course, it won't be instant. We would probably have a command put in, and then a window pops up with a progress bar saying, "We are repairing all of your items." If that's something that is, if that's what people are envisioning, it's technically possible.
So we've seen some classic Final Fantasy XI gear sets slowly added over time to Final Fantasy XIV. Is this a trend that will continue? And if so, are there any that you or someone on your team have an eye on that you'd like to see added?
Of course, we will be having an update to the Forbidden Land of Eureka content in the Pagos installment, and we will be featuring 11 as well there, so there will be some gear added in that installment as well. And in terms of your second part of the question about what they're looking at, if the dev team or Yoshida is looking at any particular gear, if they were to specifically comment on what it is, it would kind of take away from the fun of the players that like the content. So he would encourage players to try out the content, play it, and find out for themselves.
Lots of players have a close attachment to Ishgard after Heavensward and are starting to miss it. Are there any plans to possibly add content that lets us spend time with some popular Ishgard characters from Heavensward and maybe check in on how Ishgard is doing since the end of the Dragonsong War?
The development team and Yoshida, of course, understand how Ishgard was popular to players, and I'm afraid we're not able to delve too much into detail, but with the Warriors of Light continuously continuing in their adventure, and they will be involved in yet another large fight. Eventually we might see some of the familiar characters, and there might be instances where they shine in the adventure. So we hope that the players continue to look out for opportunities like that.
So one of the best parts of Final Fantasy XV was the ability to listen to your music wherever you wanted to. Is there any chance you can maybe get like an Orchestrion Walkman or something like that for players?
So with our sound director Soken, and how he approaches composing music for Final Fantasy XIV is that we make sure that the music matches to the gameplay experience of whatever content our player is currently tackling. And so the music that is composed, we feel, is the best and most optimized for whatever situation our players are in. So 14 sort of stands behind having music available whenever and wherever is not really optimal for our format. And technically speaking too, because it is an MMORPG, having a whole library of songs available at your control it's more difficult than a standalone title that doesn't require you to be constantly online, constantly transmitting data. So if this were maybe a standalone game, perhaps, but yeah.
What are you most looking forward to? What are you working on that you feel most comfortable talking about that has you very excited?
So main stories.
Because of course we are a numbered Final Fantasy title, how our story unravels we feel is very important, an important element of the game. And with our current patch that we released, patch 4.3, so many people were surprised by it. They had emotions that were evoked, yes, through the story. So we want to continue that. We want to provide the best scenario possible for our players out there. So I think that's definitely something that we are passionate about, and something we hope that the players stay tuned for also.
What is his current feeling on the state of crafting and gathering? Is he satisfied with everything or is there anything dramatic he'd like to see changed in the future?
Looking at the system in general for crafting and gathering, he feels that there is no big issues, so that's fine. But he does notice that for brand new players to attempt crafting or gathering, the bar is a little bit high for them to jump right in. So it is a challenge that the development team wants to sort of overcome, and so they are making preparations to address that. And so that is from a system perspective. But on top of that, we also want to consider content that makes it fun to be a disciple of the land or disciple of the hand. For those classes to specifically enjoy in terms of content, and we are making plans for that as well. So we will be revealing information once it becomes available. So I think that's something that the fans might want to look forward to as well.
Okay, so to wrap up, I'm going to go with two short, selfish questions because I'm a summoner. So I'm going to ask some summoner questions, okay? The mandatory question I asked to ask, is there any update on whether or not Eggy Glamours for Shiva, Ifrit, Titan will be added anytime soon? Or is it in being considered at least?
The development team does acknowledge it is about time to do our next thing, but we're not going to reveal what that next thing is going to be just yet.
So I know it's way too far away to talk any certainty about major job changes for any potential future expansions, right? However, I really enjoyed what Stormblood did with Summoner as far as Demi Bahamut. I thought from a design perspective, building up combos to unleash Bahamut is very fun and is more in line with the traditional view of summoners from my perspective from older Final Fantasy games. So, you know, temporarily bringing in a very powerful summon to do a lot of damage and then it leaves. Is this something that you would consider continuing on in the future? Is it something that you also enjoyed and something maybe you want to see continue?
Yeah, I'm afraid we're not able to just specifically pinpoint on the summoner, especially if we're going to be talking about how the different jobs are going to be sort of handled moving forward. So I think all we can say is we will be revealing information as they become available, so maybe something to stay tuned for. It is understood that a lot of players who do utilize the summoner did enjoy the Demi Bahamut summon, and so the development team will take that to heart and investigate what else can we do to be an enjoyable experience for our different players. If we were to consider some kind of summon, we have to be mindful of the size.
Yes.